Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, and I rise to speak in regard to the motion put forward by the Leader of the Opposition regarding economic development and infrastructure program. Yes, looking at the motion, I'd certainly like to acknowledge the outstanding work done by the private sector in developing projects here in the Northern Territory and commend them on the work that they do. But the remainder of the motion commending the 24-25 Northern Territory Infrastructure Program, it really is difficult to accept the program put forward by Labor in 24-25. In fact, it's been extremely difficult to accept any infrastructure program put forward by Labor over the last 8 years. What we've seen, Mr Deputy Speaker, is that ongoing for a number of years now, we've heard Labor talk about a record infrastructure program. It seems to be the mantra that comes out every year, every budget time. I've sat in this House for 4 years listening to Labor present these infrastructure programs, and I think their latest program was somewhere, I think I heard last year they said it was a record infrastructure program again, and I think they were quoting somewhere between, and I haven't got the figures in front of me, 4.2 billion, yeah, somewhere between 4 billion and 5 billion, but the reality is, I'll have to ask the member for Nelson how many zeros. I haven't. But the reality is, Mr Deputy Speaker, is that whilst all of these infrastructure programs that have been spoken about between $4 and $5 billion, the reality is that Labor simply haven't left any money to fund any of it. And that's the reality. As the Treasurer, I think, said this morning, 313 million is in the infrastructure program. So they can talk about these record infrastructure programs, but the reality is that there's no cash there to support it. So unfortunately, Territorians have been misled by Labor. So if I do, and I'll go on, and as I said, Territorians have watched as Labor has made announcement after announcement after announcement over the last 8 years. But as I get to it, and I'll talk about some of the promises that have never been delivered in the Barkly, Mr Deputy Speaker, because you often hear me talk about this, that it's very rare to see a shovel in the ground under the previous Labor government, and I've got a number of projects that I can talk about that were promised in the Barkly over the last 8 years, but simply were never delivered by Labor. So yes, have a cup of tea while you listen in, Mr. Member for Nelson, I should say. Basically, Labor delivered an infrastructure program riddled with significant shortfalls. Cash allocations couldn't keep up with the projects they started, putting us in a position where contractual obligations could potentially go unmet. Projects with budgets spiralling out of control, and one example is the Tiger Brennan Drive that blew out by, I think, over $100 million. So the original quote, or the original budget line that we were told was around about 62 million. Of course, that blew out by a further $100 million under Labor. But let me just give some examples of some of the projects that were promised by Labor. Some of them were delivered, some were delivered way over budget over the last 8 years. We know that the shiplift, for example, I think when it was originally put forward, I think it was estimated to be around about $100 million. Under Labor, the cost of delivering the shiplift now is, of course, well over $500 million. I just spoke about the overpass on Tiger Brennan Drive. Started off at 60. Labor basically committed us to a overall cost of around about $164 million for that project. They committed us to $145 million for the Darwin Civic and State Square redevelopment. We've spoken about the $12.7 million that was, in my view, wasted on a police station at Nightcliff. Building a police station at Nightcliff, I think I heard before, it's essentially an unmanned police station. So $12.7 million spent on that for a police station that essentially opens between 8 and 4:21 Monday to Friday. So that's the situation we were placed in. Who could forget the $35 million that was paid out to youth offenders? $35 million Labor paid out. A secret payout, that's right. There was the $12 million grandstand at the Fanny Bay Racecourse, a $14 million overspend on the Garramilla Boulevard. Who could forget the $432,000 to move a bus stop from Kavanagh Street to Smith Street, but then back again? So that's another example of the wasteful spending of the former Labor government. The budget blowout on the underground, above-ground car park here at Parliament House, $7 million blowout on that project. And of course, we've heard about this unshaded structure on Kavanagh Street, $2.7 million. And as I said the other day, you know, we talk about growing the economy, but of course Labor can't even grow a vine on this unshaded structure on Kavanagh Street. So what hope did we have under Labor when they couldn't grow a vine, let alone grow the economy? I think yesterday I spoke about the $4.3 million consultancy into a COVID response, which ended up at ICAC. I think it started off at, I think it might have been, don't quote me on it, but I think it started off at about $700,000, then grew into about a $4.3 million consultancy. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, at the moment we're spending roughly $80,000 a year, it might be more, just to maintain the shadeless structure on Kavanagh Street, close to $100,000 I think. So there was the $2 million overspend on the Myelly Point Playground. There was a $1 million overspend on demolition of the Cham building. The Labor government spent $220,000 on a renewables targets report, which was made public after a FOI request, with every single page redacted. So $220,000 on a report that was released to the public, but every page was redacted. So I don't know what that says, but this is one that always concerns me, Mr. Deputy Speaker, because the former government spent $40,000 advertising Boundless Possible. So that was that failed marketing exercise by the Labor government. And look, the last time I saw Boundless Possible was when it was advertised on a rocket being launched out of Queensland. That was the last time I saw it, and that was back in November 2018. So that's an example of just more waste and waste and waste from the Labor government. But I'm sure the member for Nelson will remember this one, and this is the $5,000 Christmas tree. So after one of their chief ministers, I think they had three, this I think was the first chief minister they had, Michael Gunner, came out, told everybody that we're reining in spending across the board, and I think within a week there was Labor was spending $5,000 renting a Christmas tree. But in the meantime, Mr. Deputy Speaker, what we did see, and what concerned me with all this reckless spending, was that being the member for Barkly, the lack of investment in the Barkly and other parts of the Northern Territory as well. So I just want to remind members here that not only did we have a significant period of reckless spending where the Labor took us from a $1.8 billion debt, and of course we know that now we're facing, coming into government, around about $11 billion debt. So what didn't get delivered? We've heard Labor today talk about all of this infrastructure that they apparently did, but in Borroloola, Mr Deputy Speaker, it must have been close to 5 years ago now, the former Labor government committed $3.5 million for a 30-lot subdivision in Borroloola. Now, you heard me talk about shovels. Not one shovel's hit the ground for that project over the last 5 years. When it comes to the new health clinic at Borroloola, we've made a commitment to build that health clinic at Borroloola, but the reason that we did make that commitment because Labor again failed to deliver essential infrastructure in Borroloola because they didn't focus on the bush. They didn't focus on the bush when it came to delivering essential services such as health, education, community safety through policing, the lack of investment, the amount of waste just going on projects that I've just rattled off. The dialysis facilities, I've spoken many times about kidney disease, and it's an absolute crisis right across the Northern Territory. And again, I'll just remind the House that on the 26th of April 2022, Labor, through their failed federal members, and I think it must have been Marion Scrimgeour, came out and promised 30 renal clinics for the Territory. So again, 30 renal clinics would make a significant difference to many of the remote communities here in the Northern Territory when it comes to renal dialysis. We often see families having to travel long distances for renal dialysis treatment, and that's having a significant impact on communities right around the Northern Territory, because it's not just the patient that needs to travel. Patients need family support when they travel as well, so we're seeing significant travel and disruption in remote communities because of Labor's failure to invest. So that commitment, 3 years ago, we're just a month away from that being 3 years ago, where that commitment to build 30 renal clinics, again, another complete failure. But as part of that commitment, there was a commitment made to invest in 500 Aboriginal health workers at the same time. That commitment was never delivered as well. But even more importantly, just like kidney disease, Labor promised to double the funding for rheumatic heart disease. Again, never seen. So these are the sort of hollow commitments that have been made by Labor over many, many years, and certainly 19 out of the last 23 years we've had a Labor government in the Northern Territory, and all we've ended up with is overspends, money being wasted on projects where critical services have just been ignored by Labor. So I think I heard, I think it might have been the member for Daly talking about roads, and when we talk about roads, I've been talking about roads in this House for 4 years, and it's very concerning to me that looking at the federal budget, there's an investment of what, $200 million, and that's to I think upgrade some of the road between Katherine and Darwin. Yet the federal government is investing $7.2 billion on the Bruce Highway in Queensland. Yet the people in my electorate, Mr Deputy Speaker, continue to suffer because of the poor quality of roads. The Stuart Highway has been closed a number of times over the last couple of years because of weather events. I can still remember the member for Nelson coming across that massive washout 45 kilometres south of Tennant Creek, and look, I virtually, if I had a ladder, I would have had to have given it to him to get out of that hole. That's how deep it was, and as we went through it, it was left as virtually gravel. And that was the Stuart Highway, and that was just one part of the Stuart Highway that had been cut. But there's the Barkly Highway, that was cut last year as well. No further investment to lift the highway to make it more resilient to these weather events. When I travel out bush, and look, the bush members over there know as well as I do the condition of roads out bush, but they had 8 years to fix them. 8 years. And 8 years is a long time for people. It's a long time for our pastoralists. It's a long time for tourists. It's a long time for locals. It's a long time for business people to be travelling those roads. And just think of the damage that's being caused to trucks, to vehicles. I think I've said it, I think it was just a few years ago where I reported that I'd lost 2 sets of number plates just travelling through my electorate because the corrugations on the roads are quite substantial, where my number, I think it was my rear number plate, fell off at least twice while I was travelling those roads. But that's just a small example. But think about pastoralists trying to manoeuvre their trucks through some of these roads. They just can't get through them. But think about the locals that are living in the communities. People often say to me, well, how come there's so many abandoned cars around? You go to a community, you know what it is? It's the quality of the roads that locals are driving on is actually destroying their vehicles. Absolutely destroying their vehicles, Mr Deputy Speaker, because of the neglect, the failure of Labor to invest in our roads over the last 8 years. So when it comes to roads, we have some significant problems in the roads right across the Barkly. If we look at some of the opportunities for tourists to come to the Northern Territory, I've spoken about the Wollongong Road between Queensland and Borroloola. For 4 years, while Labor was in government, I called for them to upgrade the Wirian, Falsh and the Fletcher rivers because they're often impassable during various times of the year. The Georgina River, just near Lake Nash, I think it might be underwater at the moment as we speak. I did see some photos of flooding there, but there's been no investment to put bridges, lift those roads so that traffic can get through in and out of those particular remote areas. So, but schools, Ali Kurung School, the former Labor government had an opportunity to invest in schools in my electorate and they failed to do so. The Ali Kurung School, I've often described it as the worst school probably in Australia. That's how bad it was left by Labor. The Munkata School, the Newcastle Waters School were totally ignored under the Labor government. But the staggering part about this is that leaving those schools in a total state of disrepair, at the same time we saw school attendance drop to 46%. So I think there's a correlation there between the standard of the schools that Labor left behind versus the attendance rate, because I've often said that I wouldn't even go to the Ali Kurung School. That's how bad it is. The condition of the Ali Kurung School, and you know, listening to the member for Gwaja, he was part of that government that had an opportunity to step in and do something for the bush, do something for the Barkly, but of course he didn't. He didn't even step in to try and make change to some of our most critical services, as I've said, education, health, community safety, and I haven't even spoken about the Alparulam police station that the Labor government closed in February 2018. Closed it. There's a police station at Alparulam, but Labor closed it in February 2018. Not only did they close it, they forgot to tell the community that they were closing it. So one day the police station was open, next day it was closed, and the community said, well, where are the police? And unfortunately, as the member for Barkly, I think I might have been the mayor of the Barkly Regional Council back then, we were left to tell the community that Labor had failed them by closing the doors of the police station. Yeah, well, at the same time, they were busy investing $12.7 million in the Nightcliff police station. So absolutely disgraceful, Mr Deputy Speaker, is that on one hand, they're closing a bush police station, I should say. Critical...
Sorry, member for Drysdale.
I'd like to request an extension.
Leave granted? Yeah. Leave granted.
Thank you to the member for Gwaja for supporting that. But that's what happened, Mr Deputy Speaker. On one day they closed the Alparuan police station, the next day they're investing $12.7 million in a police station that's not needed at Nightcliff. So that's an example of the infrastructure program that they were running. So I've spoken about these before. $3.175 million was promised for accommodation for health staff in Tennant Creek. That was 4 or 5 years ago now. Not one shovel was hit the ground. One of the critical things, and last night I spoke about the work that bushfires have been doing in Tennant Creek. The thing that was never spoken about much was that Labor scrapped 2 positions of bushfires NT in Tennant Creek back in 2020. So that was the attitude of the Labor government, scrapping 2 key positions and then wondering why we were facing an uphill battle to deal with an absolute emergency when it came to bushfires in the Barkly. 5.5 million youth justice facility, that was promised back in 13th of April 2019. I'm just thankful that we're in government because we're going to finish that project off. It's Labor dragged their feet over 4 years, so we're going to finish that particular project off. Mr Deputy Speaker, I could probably talk for another hour about the failures of the Labor government, but what I do want to quickly say is that we're taking steps to rebuilding the economy, Mr Deputy Speaker, and I'm really proud to just remind the House that we are implementing the Rebuilding the Economy Northern Territory Economic Strategy. So we're doing the work that's needed to not only reduce crime, rebuild the economy, but restore our territory lifestyle. I'll leave it there, Mr Deputy Speaker, because there's probably too much that I need to say with very little time to do it. So thank you for the opportunity to contribute.